What if the most sophisticated communication network ever devised wasn't built with wires, satellites, or fiber optics, but with the very fabric of the human spirit? Imagine a technology so powerful that it renders physical distance obsolete, allowing a thought whispered in one corner of the world to manifest instantly in the mind of another, thousands of miles away. For centuries, a hidden manuscript has guarded this secret, buried under the weight of history and the fear of those who would see it destroyed. It is known as the Treatise of Angels, but do not be deceived by the name. This is not a book of religion or myth. It is a technical manual for a forgotten science, a protocol for a form of telepathy that treats the invisible realm as a vast, celestial hardware. In the pages of this forbidden text, we find a reality that shatters everything we think we know about the limits of the human mind. The masters who wrote these words didn't view the space between us as a void. To them, the air is a pulsating, intelligent infrastructure, a network of messengers that act as the carrier waves for human intent. We have been taught to look at the sky and see empty space, but this manuscript reveals an unseen architecture of frequencies and relays that has been waiting for us to plug back in. This is the story of a technology that was silenced because it granted the individual a power that no government or church could control. The power of a truly open, connected, and unhackable consciousness. You are about to enter a world where symbols are encryption keys, where planets are signal boosters, and where the human brain is the ultimate receiver. We are going to strip away the legends and look directly at the mechanics of this ancient telepathy. We will explore how to tune the internal architecture of your mind, how to encode thoughts into geometric signatures, and how to navigate the great network without being lost in the static of the collective subconscious. This is not a journey into the supernatural. It is a journey into a lost physics of the soul. Prepare yourself, for once you understand how the network functions, you will never look at a silent room or a starry night the same way again. You are no longer just a viewer. You are a potential operator of the most ancient and advanced system of communication in existence. If you are ready to unlock the secrets that were meant to stay hidden, make sure to like this video and subscribe to join our search for the truth. Imagine a world where the air between us is not a void, but a sophisticated, pulsating network of intelligence. To understand the technology described in this forbidden treatise, we must first strip away the modern imagery of winged beings and halos. In the eyes of the masters who penned these hidden pages, angels were not merely religious icons. They were the invisible, underlying fabric of the universe itself. They were the original messengers, a word that in its ancient root signifies the transmission of information. This treatise posits that the entire cosmos is held together by a dense, invisible web of celestial entities that act as a universal medium for the movement of thought. This is the foundation of the angelic technology, the realization that space is not empty, but is instead a highly conductive field capable of carrying a human intention from one mind to another across any distance. The text describes this medium as a fluid, ethereal substance that permeates all things, bridging the gap between the physical world and the realm of pure intellect. When the author speaks of the hierarchy of these beings, he is not describing a social order, but rather a technical map of different layers of frequency. Each rank of the angelic order represents a specific bandwidth of reality. Some operate close to the material earth, handling the dense, slow vibrations of physical matter, while others exist in the higher, faster reaches of the celestial spheres. To communicate through this system, the operator must understand that they are tapping into a pre-existing infrastructure. It is a network that has existed since the dawn of time, waiting for a mind disciplined enough to utilize its channels. The treatise suggests that every thought we have creates a ripple in this medium, but without the proper technology or method, these ripples are nothing more than noise, weak signals that dissipate before they can reach a destination. By viewing these celestial beings as the carriers of information, the manuscript shifts the focus from prayer to protocol. It explains that the angelic medium is entirely indifferent to the distance between 2 points. In this forgotten science, the concept of here and there is a limitation of the human body, not the human spirit. Because the angelic fabric is interconnected and omnipresent, a message encoded into this medium does not need to travel through physical space in a linear fashion. Instead, it is uploaded into the angelic layer, where it exists simultaneously at the point of origin and the point of destination. This is why the treatise emphasizes the need for absolute clarity of mind. Any shadow or doubt acts as interference, a form of static that prevents the message from being correctly perceived by the medium. This first step into the forbidden knowledge requires us to accept a staggering proposition, that we are constantly immersed in a sea of potential communication. Every inch of the atmosphere is teeming with these invisible relays that are perfectly designed to transport the word. The treatise calls this the great chain of being, but it functions more like a global nervous system. When an operator learns to interact with this medium, they are not performing a miracle. They are simply engaging with a natural law that the rest of the world has forgotten. The angels are the bandwidth, the cables, and the signals of a telepathic system that renders physical distance obsolete. They are the living software of the universe, and once you understand that they are the medium through which all reality is projected, you begin to see that the human mind is not a closed box, but a terminal connected to an infinite angelic network. This is the invisible architecture that makes the impossible possible, turning a silent thought into a signal that can echo across the stars. Here's a question for you. Have you ever heard a voice in your head while falling asleep or during an out-of-body experience, but the voice seemed to be coming from outside? Personally, I have, and it was very disturbing. Feel free to write your comments below. Once you understand that the universe is a vast invisible network of angelic frequencies, a secondary problem emerges, the state of the receiver. According to this ancient manuscript, the human mind is naturally designed to be the ultimate terminal for these celestial signals. But in our current state, we are malfunctioning hardware. The treatise argues that the average human mind is like a radio tuned to static, overwhelmed by the smoke and noise of the material world. To engage with the technology of telepathy, one must first rebuild the internal architecture of the spirit. This is not a matter of faith, but of rigorous mental engineering. The book describes the mind as a vessel of light that has become encrusted with the rust of the senses. To clear this rust, the operator must undergo a process of radical internal purification designed to transform the brain into a highly conductive, crystalline receiver. The manuscript is incredibly specific about the cleaning of the senses. It suggests that our eyes, ears, and touch are actually filters that prevent us from perceiving the angelic medium. These physical senses keep us locked into a local, linear reality. To unlock the internal receiver, the text mandates a protocol of sensory deprivation and focused silence. It explicitly states that the soul must be made thin and light, almost as if it were being stretched into a fine wire capable of vibrating in resonance with the higher spheres. This isn't about morality, it's about physics. A heavy, distracted mind lacks the tension required to catch a signal moving through the ethereal plane. The book describes this state as the speculum mentis, or the mirror of the mind. For the angelic technology to work, the mind must become as still and reflective as a mountain lake at midnight. If there is even a single ripple of personal desire or mundane worry, the incoming transmission will be distorted beyond recognition. Central to this internal architecture is the faculty of the imagination. However, the treatise defines imagination very differently than we do today. In these hidden pages, imagination is not the ability to invent fictions, but the shaping of the internal air. It is the antenna. The manuscript claims that when we visualize a specific geometric form or a color with perfect clarity, we are actually sculpting our internal energy to match a specific frequency. This is the tuning mechanism. As the shape is formed within, so the signal finds its home, the text explains. By holding a complex mental image without deviation for extended periods, the operator creates a vacuum in the mind, a shape-shaped hole that the corresponding angelic intelligence is naturally drawn to fill. This is the moment of connection. You are no longer thinking, you are receiving. The treatise also warns of the internal static caused by the ego. In the logic of this forgotten science, the I is the greatest obstacle to telepathy. The sense of being an isolated individual acts as a lead shield, blocking the influx of universal information. To bypass this, the manuscript provides exercises in disidentification, where the operator learns to view their own thoughts as if they were external data points. By detaching from the self, you effectively lower the electrical resistance of your mind. You become a passive conductor. The book suggests that the most profound telepathic transmissions occur in the void between breaths, a state of absolute mental suspension where the internal dialogue has been completely silenced. In this state, the architecture of the receiver is fully online. You are no longer a person trying to hear a voice. You have become a part of the network itself. Finally, the text delves into the concept of resonance. It explains that the internal receiver must be tempered like steel. This involves aligning the three primary chambers of the mind, memory, intellect, and will, into a single focused point. When these three aspects are perfectly synchronized, the mind produces a harmonic tone that is audible to the angelic messengers. The manuscript describes this as the call of the silent bell. Once this internal frequency is achieved, the operator doesn't need to seek out information. The information seeks them. It is a state of total permeability. You become a living gateway through which the knowledge of the great network can flow without friction. This is the secret of the masters. They didn't have better ears, they had clearer mirrors. They understood that the mind is not a storage device, but a sophisticated biological transducer of the divine signal. With the internal receiver tuned and the angelic medium understood, the treatise moves to the most technical aspect of this forgotten science, the encoding of the message. In the modern world, we use digital packets and fiber optic pulses. In the hidden world of the manuscript, the primary technology is the sigil. To the uninitiated, a sigil looks like a mere decorative drawing or a chaotic scribble of lines and circles. However, the text reveals that these symbols are actually complex mathematical carrier waves. A sigil is a geometric distillation of a specific angelic frequency, designed to wrap a human thought in a protective shell so it can be launched into the ethereal network without being degraded or lost. The manuscript explains that human language is inherently flawed for telepathic transmission. Words are slow, heavy, and bound by cultural context. To send a thought through the great network, that thought must be compressed into a non-linear format. This is where the sigil becomes essential. The process described is one of radical abstraction. The operator takes an intent, for example, the transmission of a specific warning or a secret piece of data, and translates it into a numerical value. These numbers are then mapped onto a planetary grid, creating a series of intersecting lines. The resulting shape is not an image, it is a signature of resonance. It is a precise visual representation of the energy required to vibrate the angelic medium at a specific coordinate. The treatise describes the sigil as a carrier wave because it provides the momentum for the message. Without the sigil, a thought is like a whisper in a hurricane, but when a thought is sealed within the geometric structure of a sigil, it acquires a specific weight and direction. The book emphasizes that the geometry must be perfect. A single line drawn at the wrong angle or a circle that does not close properly is compared to a broken circuit. If the sigil is flawed, the energy leaks, and the transmission fails to bridge the gap between the physical and the spiritual. This is why the masters spent years studying the language of the point and the line, the foundational geometry that governs the structure of the invisible world. Beyond simple transmission, the sigil acts as a highly sophisticated encryption key. The manuscript reveals that the angelic network is teeming with drifting intelligences, entities that can intercept or eat unprotected thoughts. Thou sigil acts as a seal that only the intended receiver can break. This is achieved through harmonic coupling. The operator creates two identical mental sigils, one for the sender and one for the receiver. Because these two symbols share the same geometric DNA, they exist in a state of permanent resonance. When the sender activates the sigil, the receiver's internal architecture, which we discussed in the previous part, begins to vibrate in sympathy. It is exactly like two tuning forks. Strike one, and the other begins to hum, even if they are miles apart. The text also details the spirit of the address. Every sigil is addressed to a specific angelic node, an intelligence that governs a particular domain of knowledge or geographic area. By incorporating the name of this intelligence into the sigil, the operator is essentially typing in a destination URL. The manuscript makes it clear that these names are not arbitrary labels, but are themselves numerical codes that describe the density and speed of the angel in question. By merging the operator's intent with the angel's signature, a composite wave is created. This wave has the power to pierce through the material veil and travel instantaneously to the target. Finally, the treatise explains the release. Once the sigil is constructed and the thought is encoded, the operator must perform a mental discharge. This is the moment the signal is sent. It requires a sudden, total abandonment of the image. The book warns that if the operator continues to hold the sigil in their mind after the transmission, the message will remain tethered to the sender, never reaching its destination. You must fire and forget. The sigil, acting as a carrier, takes the thought into the deep current of the angelic medium, where it travels as a pulse of pure geometry until it finds its matching resonance in the mind of the receiver. This is the art of the invisible word, a technology that turns a symbol into a bridge across the infinite. To understand the full scale of the angelic technology, one must look upward, not to the stars as distant burning gases, but as the colossal interlocking gears of a celestial transmission system. In this hidden science, the planets are not mere physical bodies orbiting a sun. They are the great relays. The treatise explains that while a human mind can generate a signal, it often lacks the raw voltage to push that signal through the dense atmosphere of the material world. To solve this, the ancient masters utilized a planetary relay system, a method of bouncing a telepathic message off the celestial spheres to amplify its reach and ensure its delivery. This is the cosmic backbone of the network, where each planet acts as a specialized node with its own unique bandwidth and processing power. The manuscript describes 7 primary spheres, each functioning like a different layer of a global operating system. The moon, for instance, is described as the lens of the sublunary, the final gatekeeper that translates spiritual signals into physical reality. It is the lowest and fastest relay, responsible for the last mile of the transmission. Above it sits Mercury, the great router, which governs the speed and fluidity of the data. When an operator needs a message to travel with absolute precision and rapid turnover, they must synchronize their internal frequency with the mercurial vibration. The treatise posits that these spheres are constantly broadcasting their own specific energies, and the skilled practitioner learns to hitch a ride on these existing waves. You are not fighting the universe to send your message. You are simply placing your data packet into the stream of a celestial current that is already moving in the right direction. One of the most profound revelations in the text is the concept of celestial windows. This is the forgotten science of timing. The book explains that the uptime of the network fluctuates based on the relative positions of these planetary relays. There are moments when the gates between the spheres are wide open, creating a high-speed corridor for information to flow. This has nothing to do with the superstitions of common astrology and everything to do with the harmonic convergence of frequencies. When the sun, the central amplifier and power source of the entire system, aligns with a specific relay, the signal strength of the operator is multiplied tenfold. The manuscript provides complex tables of angelic hours, which are essentially schedules for network availability. By launching a sigil-encoded thought at the exact microsecond of a planetary peak, the operator ensures that the message is caught by the orbital wake and carried to the target with unstoppable momentum. The outer spheres, like Jupiter and Saturn, serve as the heavy-duty infrastructure of the network. Jupiter is described as the expander, used when a message needs to reach a wide audience or influence the collective consciousness of a city or nation. It provides the broadcast capability. Saturn, conversely, is the cold archive or the lead shield. It governs the most profound secrets and the most distant transmissions. It is the relay of time and silence. Messages sent through the Saturnian node are encrypted with a delay protocol, intended to manifest weeks, months, or even years later. The treatise suggests that some transmissions are still in flight today, circling the outer reaches of the planetary network, waiting for a receiver with the correct internal architecture to finally catch them. Furthermore, the manuscript discusses the solar core as the ultimate server. It describes the sun not just as a source of light, but as the heart of the word. Every telepathic signal that moves through the angelic medium eventually passes through the solar filter, where it is cleansed and energized. The sun acts as a universal synchronization clock, keeping all the other planetary relays in perfect phase. Without this central heartbeat, the telepathic network would dissolve into chaotic noise. The operator is taught to visualize their thought as a spark that is drawn into the solar fire before being reflected back out to its destination. This bouncing technique allows the message to bypass any physical or spiritual obstacles on Earth, as it is traveling from a top-down celestial perspective rather than moving linearly across the ground. By mastering this planetary relay system, the practitioner ceases to be a lone individual whispering into the dark. They become a system administrator of the cosmos. They understand that the solar system is a living, breathing machine designed for the movement of intelligence. Every planet is a station, every orbit is a circuit, and every alignment is an opportunity for a high-speed data transfer. The treatise makes it clear: the stars are not there to be looked at, they are there to be used. They are the hardware of the divine mind. And once you know the protocols, the entire sky becomes your transmission tower, turning the vacuum of space into a vibrant, echoing hall of infinite communication. Once the message is launched into the angelic network and boosted by the planetary relays, it reaches its final and most delicate stage, entering the mind of the target. This is what the treatise calls mental inception. It is the art of placing a thought so deeply into another person's consciousness that they believe they originated it themselves. The manuscript makes a crucial distinction here. This is not a loud external voice or a psychic attack. It is a subtle leak of information from the ethereal plane into the private vault of the human subconscious. In this forgotten science, the mind is compared to a walled city with many gates. While the front gate of conscious reason is always guarded and suspicious, there is a back door that remains open, the gate of the imagination and the deep instinct. The technology of Inception works by bypassing the critical filters of the waking mind. The treatise explains that when we are awake, our reason acts as a shield, questioning every new idea that enters our field of vision. To circumvent this, the operator uses the angelic signal to whisper to the target's soul, while the target is distracted or asleep. The book describes the human mind as a series of concentric circles. The outermost circle is the world of the senses, which is noisy and chaotic. The inner circles are where the will resides. By using a sigil-encoded message, the transmission does not strike the outer wall. It materializes directly within the inner circle. The text provides a hauntingly simple explanation. The word must not fall as a heavy stone, but as a drop of oil on water, spreading silently until it covers the whole surface. This means the thought is introduced as a faint, almost imperceptible feeling or a gut instinct. A significant portion of this part of the manuscript is dedicated to the state of sleep. The treatise views sleep as the moment when the human internal receiver is naturally set to its highest sensitivity. When the physical body rests, the spirit stretches out into the angelic medium. This is the bridge of dreams. The operator is taught to time their transmission to coincide with the target's deepest hours of rest. During this window, the target's ego is offline and the mind is in a state of total permeability. The angelic signal enters the dreamscape not as a message, but as an experience. If the operator wants to influence a person to make a specific choice, they don't send the command, "Do this." Instead, they send the feeling of having already done it and the satisfaction that follows. When the target wakes up, they don't remember a voice. They simply feel a new, unexplained conviction or a sudden revelation that seems to have bubbled up from their own soul. This process is often called remote influence, but the manuscript warns that it is more like mental gardening. You are planting a seed in someone else's garden. Once the seed is planted, you cannot force it to grow. You must let the target's own mental energy water the idea. This is why the technology is so effective. It utilizes the target's own power against their own defenses. The book explains that if a person believes a thought is their own, they will defend it with their life. By hiding the transmission inside the target's natural thought patterns, the operator creates a Trojan horse of the mind. The recipient begins to rationalize the new idea, finding their own reasons to support it, unaware that the core of the concept was uploaded from a distant source hours or days prior. However, the treatise includes a stern warning about the law of the rebound. Because the operator is using the angelic network to touch another soul, there is a permanent tether created between the two. The manuscript explains that you cannot influence another without being changed yourself. To touch the mind of the king is to become a servant to his thoughts, the text warns. This is the shadow protocol of telepathy. If the operator's intent is malicious or based on a lie, the static of that lie will eventually travel back through the angelic medium and corrupt the operator's own internal receiver. The technology requires a cold neutrality. The most successful influencers in this system are those who can remain emotionally detached from the outcome, acting as a pure conduit for the signal without letting their own ego interfere with the transmission. In conclusion, this stage of the angelic technology reveals that our thoughts are much less private than we imagine. We are all walking through a forest of invisible signals, and our original ideas are often merely the echoes of a distant transmission. The treatise teaches that the mind is a landscape that can be shaped, molded, and written upon by anyone who knows the correct frequency. It frames the human will as a delicate instrument that can be nudged by a divine whisper. This is the ultimate power of the book, the ability to speak to the world in total silence, turning the invisible threads of the angelic medium into a harness for the collective human mind. As we dive deeper into the mysteries of this forbidden manuscript, we must face a chilling reality. The invisible world is not a quiet, empty void. It is a crowded and chaotic landscape teeming with what the author calls the debris of the soul. In this sixth part of the angelic technology, the treatise warns that the moment you open your mind to the network, you are no longer alone. You become a beacon in a sea of shadows. This is the shadow protocol, the essential art of filtering out the noise, the distractions, and the parasitic influences that threaten to corrupt every message you send or receive. To the masters of this ancient science, the air is thick with the wandering voices, remnants of old thoughts, discarded fears, and the psychic static of millions of people who have no idea their minds are leaking into the atmosphere. The manuscript explains that most people live their lives in a state of mental leakage, constantly projecting their anxieties and desires into the ethereal plane without control. This creates a sort of spiritual fog that can blur the clarity of a telepathic signal. But the danger goes deeper than mere fog. The book describes parasitic echoes, entities that are not quite alive but are drawn to the energy of a focused mind like moths to a flame. These echoes don't have a will of their own. They simply feed on the vibration of your thoughts. If you are sending a message of love but your heart is secretly full of pride, these parasites will latch onto that pride and twist the signal. By the time the message reaches its destination, it has been transformed into something unrecognizable, or worse, something harmful. This is why the treatise insists that the shadow protocol is not just a defense, but a requirement for survival. To combat this interference, the book reveals the technique of the diamond mirror. This is a mental exercise designed to make the operator's mind so smooth and so cold that nothing can stick to it. The text tells us that shadows cannot grasp what has no edges. If you can purge your mind of jagged emotions like anger, fear, or ego, the parasitic echoes simply slide off your consciousness. You become invisible to the lower vibrations of the invisible world. The manuscript describes this as a state of unshakable neutrality. You are not a person with feelings. You are a clear, hollow tube through which information flows. If a practitioner fails to achieve this state, they risk what the book calls the fragmentation. This is a terrifying condition where the operator can no longer distinguish between their own thoughts and the random intrusive voices of the network. Without the proper filters, the mind becomes a trash heap for the world's collective madness. The treatise also warns about the false messengers. In the vast expanse of the angelic network, there are intelligences that mimic the frequency of higher angels to lead the practitioner astray. These are the shadows of light. The manuscript provides a simple but profound test to identify them. A true signal from the angelic hierarchy is always described as being as cold as ice and as clear as a mathematical truth. It does not flatter you. It does not tell you what you want to hear. If a voice or a thought enters your mind and fills you with a sense of self-importance or emotional heat, the book tells you to reject it immediately. That heat is the friction of a lie. The technology of the angels is a science of the intellect, and any signal that tries to bypass your reason and target your emotions is a corruption that must be purged. Finally, the Shadow Protocol details the absolute necessity of the severing. This is perhaps the most important instruction in the entire book. Once you have completed a transmission, you must kill the connection. You cannot leave your mind open to the network while you go about your daily life. The treatise describes the tragedy of those who forgot to close the gate, people who became permanent receivers, unable to sleep or find peace because the whispers of the world never stopped. To prevent this, the manuscript teaches a ritual of mental grounding. You must visualize the great chain being broken and your consciousness retreating into the heavy, solid cage of your physical body. You must intentionally embrace the silence of the earth to wash away the vibrations of the sky. By mastering these filters and learning how to disconnect, the practitioner ensures that they remain the master of the technology rather than its victim. In the world of the forbidden, protection is not a luxury. It is the only way to keep your soul intact while you reach for the stars. The journey through this forbidden technology leads to a single breathtaking destination. The moment when the individual mind no longer needs to reach out because it has become one with the source. This is what the manuscript calls the Universal Synchronization. It is the ultimate goal of every practitioner who has ever mastered the sigils and the planetary relays. In this final stage, you are no longer just an operator of a system. You have become an integrated part of the cosmic architecture itself. The text describes this as the final marriage of the intellect, where the boundaries between the human mind and the vast angelic network dissolve entirely. You are no longer sending messages. You are simply knowing. The treatise reveals that once a mind is perfectly tuned, it enters a state of permanent resonance with what the ancients called the world soul. Imagine a vast golden lattice that connects every living thing, every star, and every secret ever whispered. To achieve synchronization is to place your own consciousness into the exact center of this lattice. The manuscript explains that in this state, distance and time become irrelevant. You don't need to wait for a signal to travel across the spheres because you are already present at the destination. The book uses the beautiful metaphor of a drop of water returning to the ocean. The drop does not lose itself, but it suddenly gains the depth and power of the entire sea. This is the true meaning of the angelic technology, not just a way to talk across distances, but a way to inhabit the infinite. In this state of synchronization, the practitioner gains access to what the text refers to as the living library. This is the archive of all information that has ever passed through the angelic medium. The manuscript suggests that every thought ever conceived by a human mind leaves a permanent trace in the ethereal fabric. By synchronizing your frequency with the universal pulse, you can read these traces as easily as you would read a letter. It claims that the great inventors, the prophets and the masters of history, were simply those who had accidentally or intentionally stumbled into this synchronization. They weren't creating new ideas, they were simply downloading them from the pre-existing network of celestial intelligence. The technology, therefore, is the key to total unhindered access to the collective wisdom of the ages. However, the treatise ends with a profound and heavy warning. To live in a state of universal synchronization is to give up the luxury of private thoughts. The manuscript explains that the network is a two-way street. Just as you can see into the heart of the world can see into yours. This is the great transparency. Only those who have achieved total internal purity can survive this stage. If you carry any darkness, any hidden malice, or any fragmentation in your soul, The sheer weight of the universal signal will shatter your mind. It is described as trying to pour the entire sun into a small clay cup. The cup must be transformed into gold first, or it will simply turn to dust. This is why the manuscript emphasizes discipline over power. The technology is only safe for those who have mastered themselves. Ultimately, the Treatise of Angels presents us with a vision of human potential that is both terrifying and sublime. It tells us that we were never meant to be isolated, lonely beings trapped in physical bodies. We were designed to be terminals for a divine, telepathic light. The angels are not just messengers. They are the bridge that allows us to step out of our small, limited selves and into the grand symphony of the universe. This forbidden science is a map to that bridge. It reminds us that the air around us is not empty. It is a humming, vibrant highway of thought, waiting for us to wake up, tune our internal receivers, and join the conversation that has been going on since the beginning of time. The secrets of the angelic medium are now in your hands. If you feel the resonance of this ancient technology and want to explore more hidden manuscripts and forbidden knowledge that history tried to erase, make sure to like this video and subscribe to the channel. Your support allows us to keep digging into the archives of the forbidden books to bring the light of the past into the present. Join us as we continue to unlock the signals of the invisible world.